channel, we're all about affordability and creativity in filmmaking, hence the $1 light. So if there's something you're into, consider subscribing, and also wait till the end of the video and I'm going to do a feature on someone else's video, just a video that I've seen throughout the week that I really want to show out as well, that I feel like has some great value. So all you're going to need to make this little commercial are a tripod, a friction clamp, a table with either a single color or some poster card that you can put on the table to make it all the same color, something to hold the light. In this case I'm using just an aperture light fixture, a dark room, and it needs to be as dark as you can get, and some paper to wrap around the light. I mean, the only other options for an AirPods commercial I came up with was some kind of lifestyle video. Or some kind of comedy video.
This is a bad area, kids. We gotta move.
So this is the best one you got. So I bought my wife some AirPods one day and we were going to the movies that night. So as you do, like any fat little kid, you go to the dollar store and you stack up on like sweets and candy and anything that's bad for you. So we did all of that, and then as I was walking out to the checkout, I look over and I see this little $1 light. And if you're anything like me, your mind just starts racing about the possibilities of what you could do with this. Maybe that's just me being weird, but maybe that's a normal thing. So right before I get into actually how to film it, as you start filming this, it's going to look nothing like this end product. So I want to show you this first shot with no effects added, no stabilization, no lock-on stabilization, no color grading, nothing. It's just raw, and it pretty much looks like it was shot on a potato. But look at this second shot. It's clean, it's buttery, it's smooth, you've got that locked-on stabilization effect. In my opinion, it looks like it was shot on a robot. But that's just my opinion. So getting into the tutorial, I shot this on the A7S II, the Sony A7S II, with an 18 to 105mm lens. Now I changed the settings a little bit, so I shot on PP7 and I got a gamma of S-Log2 and a color mode of S-Gamut. The really important thing here was turning the black gamma all the way down to -7. That really allowed me to kill the blacks and get a really good black in this shot, because all I wanted was the black in the background and the whites on top. Now for the shoot itself, a lot of this was done in the edit itself. When I was moving the camera around, I just tried to keep the AirPods in the center of the frame as much as possible. I shot in 4K so I get as much dynamic range as possible. But because I wanted all the shots to be at the same level as the AirPods themselves, I used the table as my stabilizer, almost like it was a slider, and just used that to guide me and to pivot around the subject. So this was a lot of going back and forth, just practicing, making sure you get the shot just right, and just doing it over and over again, trying to get that bit of muscle memory in there to try and get the right rotations on the shot, to try and keep the AirPods centered in the middle of the shot, and that's super important for what we come into in a bit. Of course, it's super essential to make sure that you're shooting on manual, otherwise your automatic focus is going to continuously start trying to find focus, and it's just going to give you that unprofessional look, whereas with these shots, they look clean, there's no trying to find focus or anything, and that's exactly how you want it. And then moving on to the setup itself. So I had my clean white table, and then next to the table I had my tripod, and from that I would use the friction arm to connect to that and bring out over the top of the table so that I could keep the white or the same background to my AirPod shot. From there, I simply just set my light on top of my aperture fixture and then put elastic bands around that to secure it in place. But you guys can rig that however you want. That's just one way to make it work. And this is where the paper comes in so important. So check out this shot here and you'll see that the light just splays out everywhere, and that's not what we want. We want a more centralized look just on top of the AirPods as if it's a spotlight. So I grabbed a little bit of poster card, wrapped it around the light itself, sellotaped that in place, and now you have like a funnel, like a muzzle essentially, for your light to shine a beam straight down or in the direction of the light. That gives you that nice crisp spotlight on top of your subject. From that point, it's just a case of playing around with the different angles. You'll see in one of the shots we're looking straight down. In another shot, the light is coming across the side of the AirPods, which kind of gives the look as though the AirPods are moving across the shot, but actually it's just the light. And I just simply did that by hand, just brushing it across from side to side. And again, trying that again and again and again until I got what I thought looked the same across every single one of these shots to give that effect as though items are just moving across the shot each time. So now that you've got your shot, it's time to import into the edit. And you will notice that, like I expressed earlier, none of your colors look right. They look awful, and you're thinking to yourself, well, if I drop the shadows, maybe I'll just get way more grain, or this, that, and the other. But you just have to play around until you make the blacks completely black and the whites completely white without losing all the information. So in our edit here, we're just gonna play around with this shot, and you can see we have 3 effects added. We've got color wheels, we've got color curves, and noise reduction. If I zoom in on this, let's go to 200%, scroll around to here, and if I turn off the noise reduction, you see how we get this noise coming in here. So it's really good to add that noise reduction for anything extra. But that was the last step that I added. Now to get to this point, you're really wanting to work on the color grading, those shadows and those highlights to get to this point. So I'm going to keep that turned off. I'm going to go back to my color wheels, open those up. I'm going to zoom back out to fit. And you'll see that I've dropped the shadows all the way down here, about midway, and the highlights up again. You're going to want to play around with these to make it fit for your liking. But if I pull up these shadows, set those back to normal, and set the midtones back to normal, or the highlights back to normal, look how grayed out our shot is. It just does not look good at all. So if I press Command Z, get those highlights back up, and then press Command Z again to get those shadows back down, notice how dramatic it makes the shot look. It really pulls in the information, or the loss of information, the lack of information in the shadows and in the highlights. If I press Command 7 on my keyboard, I can get my video scopes up here, and if I want to change these to Luma, that gives me a look at my blacks and my whites. So what also may be useful for you is going up to View in the top right over here and going off to Luma. And then you can see where the lines show is where you're losing information on the blacks and the whites. The blacks, I'm good with losing information because we don't want anything in there. But for the whites, I do not want to over dramatize those. So you see we're losing a little bit up here. So I need to bring down the highlights a little bit to get rid of that. And I'm going to zoom in to 200. And I want to get rid of these really strong highlights up here. So I'm just going to bring that down. Take the Luma off. Back to the fit and see how that looks. There we go. Now we have the whites are within range, the blacks are all blown out because that's perfect, that's what we want. And now maybe I just wanted to make a few more adjustments, which is why I added the color curves here. Some minor adjustments there on the midtones, and I use the color curves. I think they're better, or I prefer using the color curves on those. And you see I've just increased the midtones here. I've created 3 dots for as if I'm going to make an S-curve, and then just increase the midtones here. Then the final thing to do is add that noise reduction back in, and you have a shot that looks like this. So let's move on to another one here where it looks like we're panning across the AirPods, or it looks like the AirPods are moving across the screen. Very similar type situation here, but we have to play around a little bit and be careful because the light is moving across the screen. So I've got my color wheels and color curves very similar, but as you can tell in this shot, if I turn my range checker back on again, Luma, we've got some blown out whites inside here. So I'm going to go back to my color wheels and decrease the highlights just a little bit, just to preserve that information in there. So now you come to what can be the most time-intensive part to this, but is going to make the most difference in the professional look of this shot. So you could use a third-party plugin for this to do this lock-on stabilization, or you could just use the little tool inside Final Cut Pro. This is not what it's designed for, but you can use it for this. So if you go up to View on the right side and go on to Overlays and Show Horizon, you see we have this nice little horizon line and vertical line that come into our shot. I'm going to use these as my center point, and I'm going to track my AirPods to the center point on this horizon. So first thing I've done is I've arranged the position and the scale to match this shot so that if I zoom in, these little points meet right on top of a part in this AirPod where I can now track. See this little dot just in the middle here? And I'm going to use that as my tracking point. So go back to View, turn that horizon back on, and I'm essentially just going to go frame by frame moving this shot to make sure that that is centered up in the between those horizon lines. So before you start going step by step and doing this tracking, this is something I've recently learned from Premiere Pro. So if I click on my shot and go over to my positions, I used to think that you could click on these and you could scroll up and down to change the value, or you could just type in a number. But actually, you can do what they do in Premiere, and you can just click and drag up and down, and I found that that gives me a way more precise positioning and exact value of what I want than having to enter the number or scroll. So just try that one out. But from this point, what you're looking to do is hit the keyframe button and actually just go frame by frame and making sure that the cross in this horizon stays in that little black dot. And what that's going to do is ensure that your shot stays exactly in the middle throughout the duration of it. Now this happens for other shots as well. Like this shot is a rotating shot from above. You can see it moves around a little bit, and it depends how perfectly you want to do this. Now before you guys run off, go and get your dollar light and jump into trying this, if you're even interested in it, is that you need to remember you need to have a completely dark room. If you don't have a completely dark room, you're going to have light bouncing off in other places. You're going to have to add shape masks or masks around your image to close off that area as black and dark light. Make sure you don't have anything reflective in the room as well to reflect that light that's bouncing off the table. And you want everything else to be completely black. But what happens if you do get a bit of bouncing light off of something else? Just create a little mask, draw around it, turn that, or drop the shadows all the way down, the highlights all the way down, just turn that black, and you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. One of the other things to think about as well is shooting in that high 4K if you can, or something similar, backing up a little bit, because remember, as you try and do this lock-on stabilization effect, you're going to be cropping in, so just be wary of that, and not that you're going to chop out some of your shot. So you can use this for so many different other applications. It doesn't have to be something like AirPods. It can be for a pair of shoes. It can be for another piece of tech. It can be a drink. Really, it's up to you how you want to use this, how you want to create this effect. You could even go on a larger scale, and this light that I have here, you could stick that right above you, and that could be your kind of spotlight coming down. It's going to give you different reflections on the face. But you can angle it in different ways as well. Try it out on different scales. Use it with bigger lights that you have, like your parents may have a torch in the garage that they could, I mean, not necessarily loan you, but you could use without them noticing. It's probably better. But the possibilities to this are only limited by your imagination, so I hope you guys can find some cool things. And if you do find some cool ways to do this, tag me on Instagram in your story or something. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see what you guys create. Just share it with me. So Daniel Schiffer, always bringing out quality content. One of his videos recently is the locked-on stabilization look for the Beats by Dre in their commercial. A breakdown of how to do that. It's a really great tutorial, really well broken down. And he walks you through how to use the Pixel Film Studios auto tracker and everything that it does and all the options available in that, and it looks like a really great plugin. Overall, really great breakdown. I'll leave a link to that in the description, so go check it out if you want to. Otherwise, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do what you gotta do, and I'll see you guys in the next one.